Today, I want to talk about some of the biggest mistakes federal builders make long before they ever step foot on a project site. These are issues that happen during bidding, during proposal prep, and during that early decision making stage where one misunderstanding can cost you an entire contract. When you understand these things up front, you can prevent lost awards, avoid protests, and save yourself from months of unnecessary frustration. Everything I'm walking you through comes from decades of government work, legal work, and thousands of cases that attorneys and procurement officials have dealt with. And almost every mistake made at the bidding stage is avoidable. Federal construction used to be almost entirely sealed bidding, where lowest price wins as long as you're responsive and responsible. Responsive meant following the rules. Responsible meant you actually had the capability to do the job. The experience, the equipment, the financial strength, the bonding capacity. The hard part has always been the same. It's easy to throw out a low number, but it's hard to throw out a low number and still make money. One of the biggest traps contractors fall into is the bid bond. You can be the lowest bidder and lose everything because of a tiny technical defect, a missing signature, the wrong penal sum, the wrong power of attorney. And once bids are opened, it's too late to fix anything. If there's a public bid opening, you attend and review the abstract. One competitor mistake could move you into first place. There is a limited process to correct a true mathematical mistake in your bid, but you must notify the government immediately and support it with documents created before bid day. Anything produced afterward won't help you. Most contractors don't realize how much danger is hiding inside the solicitation itself. They miss ambiguities, inconsistencies, unclear instructions, missing information. If page 10 says something is supposed to be 6 feet and page 20 says 20 feet, that's a glaring ambiguity. You must ask the government to clarify. If you don't, you own the risk. And something as simple as failing to acknowledge an amendment, even a minor one, can get your entire bid rejected. Another issue are exculpatory clauses, language that shifts responsibility onto the contractor. Things like for informational purposes only, or the contractor cannot rely on borings. Courts understand that you rely on that information to bid, but the government will still try to use those clauses later. If you see that language, raise questions during the Q&A window. One of the most dangerous subjects in federal construction is the Buy American Act. Most contractors don't realize that their biggest mistakes happen during pre-bid, not during performance. You must know whether the project is governed by Buy American, the Trade Agreements Act, or some combination of the two. And you must know which clause actually controls. Agencies constantly include conflicting clauses. If you guess wrong, you cannot recover your additional costs later. You need to clarify anything that looks questionable before running your numbers. We're also dealing with national price escalation across every material category. Contractors are getting hit with fuel increases, long lead times, and unpredictable costs. That's why you always look for an economic price adjustment clause in the solicitation. If it isn't there, you request it before award. Some procurement officials will include it when asked, some won't. But when you move into negotiated work, the RFPs, the best value procurements, everything changes. You cannot write a boilerplate proposal and expect to win anything. You have to start thinking like the evaluators reading your material. Ask yourself what the government is trying to accomplish, what risks they're worried about, and whether your proposal makes them feel confident choosing you. When evaluators sense that you understand their mission and the purpose behind the project, you immediately separate yourself from most contractors. Evaluators also pay close attention to whether you anticipate problems. If you explain what you'll do when something goes wrong, even when the solicitation doesn't require that level of detail, it tells them you've already thought through execution. That signals planning and reliability, and it absolutely helps your technical rating. Resumes are another weak point for a lot of contractors. Outdated resumes, irrelevant experience, or listing TBD for key personnel is one of the fastest ways to sync your proposal. If you haven't hired your superintendent, your quality control manager, or your project manager, then get a commitment letter. Show the government exactly who they will get if they award to you. Leaving roles blank tells them you're not prepared, and nothing hurts a contractor faster than looking unprepared. Once an award decision is made, always request a debriefing. Treat it as a professional conversation, not a confrontation, and do not bring an attorney into that room. The second the government sees legal counsel sitting there, they shut down and share only the bare minimum. Your goal at a debrief is to learn. You take notes, gather information, and use those insights to strengthen the next proposal you submit. There will be times when the only way to understand whether an error occurred in the evaluation is to file a protest. Filing gives you access to the government's evaluation documents. Once you see those, you know instantly whether you have a case. If you don't, you withdraw. If you do, you move forward. And in many situations, the real win isn't overturning the award. It's forcing the agency to take corrective action and reevaluate the entire process. But you never fall in love with your protest. You might disagree with the award decision, but that doesn't matter. The only question that matters is whether the agency had a rational basis for what it did. It doesn't have to be the best decision. It just has to be rational. If the government can articulate that, the GAO will let the decision stand. And that's where a lot of contractors get emotionally tied up because they think wrong and irrational mean the same thing. They don't. And understanding federal construction is full of traps, money, and stress. But every one of them is avoidable when you slow down and really understand what the government is asking for. Most contractors don't lose because they can't perform the work. They lose because they didn't take the time to study the solicitation, to ask the right questions, or to catch something that was obviously going to become a problem later. You start by reading the documents carefully. You look for anything that doesn't make sense, any ambiguity, any inconsistency, any missing instruction, any place where the government contradicts itself. You follow every instruction exactly as written. You acknowledge every amendment. You make sure every required form is included, completed, and signed. These sound simple, but these are the things that get contractors knocked out of the competition every single day. Pricing is another area where contractors get hurt. You have to price realistically. You're not in business just to stay busy. You're in business to make a profit. And in federal construction, the government is not looking for the cheapest person who barely survives the job. They're looking for the lowest risk option. So when your price looks too low, or it looks unrealistic, or it doesn't match the technical approach you described, you immediately look risky in the evaluator's eyes. Showing the government that you understand their mission is another big part of winning. If the project exists because of a safety problem, a mission-critical upgrade, an energy requirement, a modernization effort, or a compliance issue, your proposal should sound like you understand that. When an evaluator feels like you already get why the work matters, you automatically look stronger than the contractor who just rewrote the scope in different words. Avoid placeholder personnel at all costs. When you submit someone's name, make sure that person is real, that their resume is relevant, and that they can do the job you're assigning them. Nothing hurts credibility faster than to be determined. The evaluator sees that, and they immediately feel like you're not ready to take the project on. And before you ever submit a number, take Buy American requirements seriously. This is one of the easiest ways for a contractor to lose money. The mistakes don't happen during performance, they happen during the bid. If you misread the clause, or if the government mixed multiple clauses together, or if you simply assumed something was compliant when it wasn't, you will not recover those costs later. You have to clarify it early. When you approach federal construction with that level of attention, slowing down, analyzing, questioning, double-checking, you instantly separate yourself from most contractors out there because most bidders never take the time to understand how the federal system actually works. Success in federal construction doesn't come from luck or guessing. It comes from clarity, preparation, and delivering proposals that remove risk from the government's perspective. Federal construction is full of traps, but every one of them is avoidable when you slow down and take the time to understand exactly what the government is asking for. You study the solicitation, you ask questions early, you look for ambiguities, you follow instructions carefully, you price the project realistically, and you make sure your proposal shows the government that you understand their mission and you're aligned with what they're trying to accomplish. You avoid placeholder personnel, you take Buy American requirements seriously before you ever run your numbers, you pay attention to the parts of the solicitation that most contractors overlook, because those small details are exactly what separate the winners from the people who keep saying, "I don't know what happened." When you approach federal work with that level of focus, you immediately put yourself in a different category than most contractors out there, because most people never take the time to understand how the federal system actually works. This isn't about luck. This is about clarity, preparation, and presenting yourself in a way that removes risk for the government. If you want help avoiding these mistakes and winning more federal work, real help from someone who's performed over 1,000 federal contracts and well over $1 billion of federal construction, schedule a Zoom with me at GCExperts.com/Zoom. We'll tighten up your entire approach from bidding to pricing to proposal writing so you're not guessing anymore. You're winning consistently. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.